Joint Community Service Director, along with Ara Ahmed. In today's session, we will discuss about mental health and body dysmorphic disorder and how it is affecting to our mentality as well as personality. We have a great panel with us today, so this would be really interesting. First of all, let me introduce you our moderator for this panel discussion. She is a radio personality in SFM, an event host, a writer, advocate, and founder of Let's Talk, where she breaks apart many social misconstructs such as male toxicity, online dating, colorism, and body shaming. By now, you all know who she is. She is none other than Nethmi Liyanapathirana. Hi, Nethmi. It's so wonderful to have you here with us today.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me. Super excited.
Thank you, Nethmi. Thank you for being here with us today.
I'm excited just as you are. Do you want me to go ahead and introduce our guest speakers, or would you be doing that?
You can go ahead, Nethmi.
Right. All right. Great. Okay. So first of all, let me just say thank you so much for taking time to be here. And I'm just really honored to be a part of this because this particular topic is something that's very close to my heart as a person who has struggled with body dysmorphic disorders, binge eating disorder, and bulimia myself. Just a big thank you to the Rotaract Club for having me, and a quick introduction on today's guest speakers. So first of all, we have Shuaib, who happens to be someone who I have had the chance of responding to and talking to earlier on a very similar panel. And he is very, very well versed when it comes to, the boundaries of what is the proper fine line when it comes to walking a good line between health and taking things too far. And he has a very good understanding of the toxicities that come along with the whole ideologies of being fit and being in the field of exercise. So Shoaib, thank you so much for taking time to be here. I hope you're having a good Christmas.
Thank you so much for having me on board. It's an absolute pleasure. And yes, I just returned from a holiday, so I've been having a really good time.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for being here. All right, next up is one of my personal favorites to talk to all the time. And she happens to be a model and advocate for the rights of people who are underrepresented in her field. And she's just overall such an incredible human being to talk to and to relate to. That is, of course, Kalpanee Gunawardana. Hi, Kalpanee.
Hi, Nethmi. Your descriptions get more and more flattering. I'm going to take that as my Christmas gift.
That's because I get to know you better every time. And it's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
So how was your Christmas? How are things with you?
I am social distancing. So it's been good. Like being at home has been good. Trying to, take all the safety precautions that I can take. I'm immunocompromised, so I'm taking that into account. I have family members who are immunocompromised. So, realities are not the same, but it's been great. I mean, yay technology. Get to meet people, get to talk to my friends. So I think privilege has a lot to do with it as well. But overall, really grateful to be safe, and it was good.
I'm really hoping things are better. I mean, I know you've been through a couple of injuries and you're in recovery, so it's just nice to hear that you're doing well.
Thank you. Getting there.
All right. Okay. So our next speaker is, of course, someone that I still haven't had the chance of meeting or talking to in person before. All right. She is known to be a mental health practitioner, and she is a dietitian of sorts, a nutritionist. And I am just so excited to introduce to you Saabira Wazeer. I hope I pronounced her name properly. Saabira, are you here?
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Nethmi. It's probably a bit hard to meet in person since I'm all the way down in Australia.
Yes. Oh, wow. Really? I did not know that.
Yes. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm just joining you late night here.
Oh wow!
Today.
What time is it over in Aussie right now?
It is 10:47, just way past bedtime.
Oh my
but
goodness!
It's okay.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. I'm really hoping to pick your brains on a couple of questions that we have lined up. And a warm welcome to everyone who's joining in. I see some names. I see Dinika, Bhakti, Janith, and Malshine, a couple of others. So thank you for being here. And I guess we can dive right in to what we're here to discuss. So when you take mental health and body dysmorphic disorders, I feel like all three of you have different inputs when it comes to this particularly broad topic of discussion. So I will be directing certain questions towards each of you. And if the others feel like there's something that they would want to add under that particular topic of discussion or that particular question, of course, let me know, because it is a conversation after all. And the audience, if you have any questions, you can always you ask them on, I think, the chat, if I'm not mistaken, unless there is a question option open. I'm not entirely sure, but you can use the chat option to post your questions and I will direct them towards the panelists. All right, so first things first. All right, Shuaib. Now, this particular question is something that I myself ran through some of my male colleagues, and they thought that this was something that is of primary importance in an era that is governed by what you look like on social media, right? So when it comes to body dysmorphic disorders, we don't seem to talk a lot about male-oriented disorders. Something that really struck me was, I think it's called bigorexia, where you always see yourself as smaller than you are, and you assume that you have to always get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's a sense of toxic masculinity that goes into this as well. So have you ever come across certain dysmorphic disorders such as bigorexia?
Right. So very quickly, before we dive into it, just for the greater benefit of everybody listening, all of these disorders that Nethmi just mentioned stem around people predominantly not being happy with their physical appearance. But of course, specifically with what she mentioned, we're talking about, the definition of your body, the size of your muscles, so on and so forth. So you can have people suffering from different things. For example, certain guys worried about what their hair looks like. If, their hair's falling off, for example, I'm particularly not somebody who has a great head of hair. It has bothered me for a very short period when it was first happening, but I've sort of even forgotten about it. And thankfully sort of graduated beyond that point. But that is, in a nutshell, what exactly this problem or this challenge might be. Now, in terms of have I come across people like this? Yes, I have. I would say on so many different occasions. People coming and saying, what can I do to grow taller, or what can I do to make my bicep a little bigger, or that that last layer of fat at the bottom of your belly, right, on the side, and then on the sides of your body, what can I do to get rid of that? Because I've been hitting the gym 7 times a week. I've been eating relatively cleaner. I cannot eat any cleaner than this, and I really, really want to get rid of this fat. I want to make this muscle bigger, so on and so forth. So yes, I most certainly have come across quite a few people, and I think in many instances, people aren't really aware that it is a form of dysmorphia, right? Because like you mentioned, especially when it comes to males, it's not a topic that's really spoken about, right? Whereas you constantly find people speaking more about how could you get stronger, how can you get more buff, right? But in this society that we're moving right now, where, like what Nethmi correctly mentioned about the whole social media and the kind of amplification that has been given to being more buff, more defined, having larger muscles and being able to lift more. And the amount of exposure that we have right now in today's day and age is massive, because on TikTok, on Instagram, everywhere that you go, if you are somebody who follows a single hashtag with fit or fitness motivation, or if you've even viewed content of that nature, that that the algorithm keeps pushing content of that nature towards you. And every time you unlock your phone, every time you go onto these platforms, you see men who have these amazing physiques, right? Now, a couple of things. Number one, you do not know if the photographs you're looking at have been edited, right? We know that you can add definition to your 6-packs. We know that there are apps that even allow you to shave off some fat in the regions that you don't want to have it, or reshape your body. That's number one. If it is a video, right, you know that there are certain things people do to amplify their image. It could be the application of an oil or a cream, for example, to make your muscles look a little bit more defined. A person could be coming in from a water fast to make their muscles look a little bit more defined. So the point really being that the number of variables they might be playing with in order to appear the way they are appearing on your mobile phone are not known to you, right? And the extents and the extremities that they go to are not known by the greater public. So often, unconsciously, people get into this habit of comparing their bodies with the ones that they see on social media. And that, I feel, drives this problem further, and it sort of amplifies the problem, because people are thinking, right? People begin to think that everybody else is able to do it except me, right? That's what they think. But the number of variables that are at play are not really known. So I think that could be one of the major contributors, the lack of awareness, the lack of education out there, which is contributing towards people getting caught in this trap. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, rightfully so. Thank you so much for that very elaborate description. I feel like everyone has a in-depth understanding as to what we are addressing here exactly when it comes to body dysmorphic disorders in men. Now, I do have a bit of a personal question for you, Shuaib. So if this is, of course, if you're comfortable, I completely understand if you would not like to go in this direction. But do you have any personal experience with these particular body standards and being affected by this particular mold that you see on social media and on other forms of media per se?
No, in the sense, when I look back many years back, yes, I was somebody who was heavily overweight. If you've seen some of my pictures on Instagram that I've shared way back when I was a kid, I was pretty much a cheese ball, right? But I was as happy as I remember even back then, because I didn't even know that, that was an issue back then. But the only reason I actually got obsessed with losing my weight was less to do with my appearance and more to do with the sport that I loved playing. So I was playing rugby at the time, and I was really bad at it. And I was convinced that being physically unfit was one of the major contributors as to why I was lagging behind my colleagues. So I made it my personal goal to lose off all of that fat. Now, I have to admit, though, again, lack of knowledge at that point in time, I did potentially one of the worst things to lose weight. I starved myself. I used to drink loads and loads of teas and plain teas to try and speed up my metabolism. And I would, like I said, skip meals and work out without having any food in my body, and then not eat, and basically just try to get in maybe just dinner or maybe an early morning breakfast. And I'm sure Saabira is, like holding her fists like it's, oh no, But the thing is, back then I didn't know the damage it could do to my metabolism. I didn't know the damage it could do to me. So I did it. And thankfully, it was a short period of time. Thankfully, it was so long ago. Thankfully, I never repeated it. And I got out of it. But I don't think that it was sort of an obsession of, oh my God, I'm fat, I need to lose weight, or I need to look a certain shape or a size. It was a little bit more objective and driven by the sport that I was pursuing. And then from that point forward, yes, I always try my best to maintain a healthy figure. But for me, it's more so to do with the functionality and being able to perform at my level best. So whatever physique that supports that is good enough for me. If you've seen my social media profile, I've got no topless pictures. I barely expose my body. I don't think it's model material, but at the same time, it really doesn't matter to me, because that is not the journey that I am on, right? So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Personally, I've never really had that issue, but I have to tell you this, quite naturally, unconsciously, right? Unconsciously, sometimes I'd catch myself wanting to get a little bit more defined or put on a little bit of muscle. But thankfully, because I have developed a practice of keeping my thoughts in check, whenever I can, taking that time, zoning out from the world and writing down my purpose, my mission, refocusing, and making sure that I'm on the right path, doing things for the right reason, I often catch myself having those dangerous thoughts, which, they creep into your mind unconsciously, right? These aren't things that people do intentionally. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right, because I feel like there are so many societal pressures at play that kind of sort of linger on, and they kind of attack your subconscious, and you have to actively tell yourself to not fall into that trap. And now this next question, I feel like, will be an open-ended question to all of the panelists. All right. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this particular issue now that Shuaib mentioned it as well. So when it comes to societal pressures, I myself find myself sometimes heavily attacked by what I see online, what I see on social media, what is, always, sometimes there are advertisements, even if I curate my social media in a way that I don't see certain toxic traits promoted. There are advertisements that target me, and I can't really run away from everything, right? So in a world that's heavily digitized, and a world that is heavily focused on selling you products and selling you ideals, right? How exactly do we navigate what health is and what boundaries are when it comes to being healthy? I think, Kalpani, if you have any thoughts on this particular area, would you like to address it?
Thank you. Like you said, yeah, it is a heavily digitized world. It's the content creators are all of us, like Shuaib was saying, right? Anybody could be editing themselves in 2 seconds. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's not real. It is overwhelming, and we all know, I think, that what we see on media at the end of the day then ends up impacting our psyche, whether it becomes a issue or a health problem to the extent that you require professional help or not, you're still impacted. And there's countless research on this, including where laws have been formulated around these findings, that it affects everyday people, the average person. You don't have to be in a vulnerable position to be influenced. If you are in a vulnerable position, obviously it's going to be harmful to you much more than to the average person. Like what Shuaib was saying, he managed to navigate it because his center or his psyche is a little bit more balanced, and he was able to navigate out of it. But a lot of young people aren't, especially impressionable young teenagers aren't, and women aren't. So, the more marginalized you are, the more you're going to feel that sort of impact. How are we going to find our way through all of this? Open education in the sense of literacy, digital literacy especially, and media literacy, to understand how media is created, what sort of advertisements are you saying, how do the algorithms work, like what Shuaib was saying. And then I'm sure Saabira would emphasize more on this: food, what your mental health is, what are you putting in your body, what are you putting in your mind. And I think the more we propagate ideas such as this, and I think, and I want to hope that that's where the world is headed, because if not, I'm going to crawl up and call it a day. But one has to have hope, right? And figuring that we're headed in that direction, I have hope that by being mindful, by having good practices that we can navigate through, we should be able to understand.
I love that. I really love that. Saabira, do you have anything you'd like to add on to this particular
Definitely.
nugget that we're
I think
discussing?
Shuaib and Kalpanee have summarized it very, very well. But I think it's also that education. I think also that confidence within ourselves is something that's huge. I think we rely so much on, I guess, everything around us to be perfect, that we forget that, we're the ones absorbing that in. And I guess within ourselves as well, seeking out that right knowledge, seeking out, what is true, what is everything that's out there real, or are we the ones who have to use our better judgment in that and actually developing that knowledge and that self-confidence within ourselves. And I know it's hard as teenagers, as young adults, it's a hard thing to kind of navigate alongside everything else. But I think it's very important that, the advocates continue to do what they're doing and be loud and louder, because, for me, it's a lot of that diet culture that I'm battling with, which is a multi-million-dollar industry. And then we've got like a small minority that's trying to speak up against this huge industry. So it's kind of going, filter out what's right and wrong, and also build that self-confidence within yourself to be able to navigate the world around you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Shuaib, do you have anything else you want to add on before we move on to a different area of discussion?
I think the ladies really summarized it there. And just to give one quick example on what they're talking about in terms of education, yes, as influencers, as people who are in the industry, I think we have that social responsibility to do what we're doing. And these two individuals do an absolutely excellent job on that, right? That's why they're here in the first place. But at the same time, it's important that the listeners understand that they've got a role to play in this as well, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are being the most affected, right? And that's probably why they're here as well. So just to give you a quick example, in our minds as humans, we have a concept known as hedonic adaptation. Now, what this essentially does is as time goes on, we begin to forget, right? Or we begin to appreciate who we are and what we have less. So that six-pack that you might have developed, right? If you have, by the way, good job, may begin to look not so defined, or you may want to define it further, right? Because you've had it now for a while. And as time goes on, you begin to forget that what you have is something good, right? It's something you're blessed to have. It's something you worked hard to achieve. So you keep wanting the next high, right? So little things like taking that time to sit down, to tune out of the noise in the world, reflect, right? And remind yourself, you know what, this is more than what most people already have. I've done a great job. I've worked hard. What I have is amazing. I'm good. I'm doing real good, right? Now, that's not going to come to you through Instagram. That's not going to come to you through social media, YouTube, whatever. You have to do that, right? You got to be your biggest advocate, your biggest supporter, the person who appreciates yourself the most. So the message, in short, adding on to what these ladies said, is that you need to put in a lot of work from your end as well.
I agree. I'm sorry. I'm going to step in first, Shuaib. And I get, regardless of if it is that six-pack, it's that body that you're carrying. You're carrying it through this world. You need to look after it no matter what you're doing, regardless of if you are happy with it at the moment or not, because that's the only way you can move forward with your life. And I always often say, you're not put on this planet to keep changing your body. You're there to live your life. So allowing yourself to do that by looking at, not only your physical, because your physical health is really, really important, but also looking deeper within and going, what can I do to better myself in all aspects of life?
I think that's beautifully said, that you're not put on this planet to change your body. There's so much truth to that. Thank you so much for that. And now that I feel like we have discussed a bit about societal pressures, I want to direct the conversation towards diet culture, because Saabira also mentioned how, diet culture is a multi-million-dollar industry, and it's not easy to navigate it. All right. So when it comes to fast diets, because every day when I open up, even if I'm on YouTube, sometimes I get these advertisements. They go like, oh, do you want to lose weight in 5 days? Try this egg diet. Try this fast diet. It's insane, because there's so much information thrown at you. How exactly do you navigate and distinguish between what is a healthy option versus what is something that's inherently unhealthy for your body as well as your mental well-being?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess let's kind of define what diet culture is. Firstly, diet culture is very much, I guess, anything or anyone who mentions that, you can change what you're doing to receive results within a short period of time. And that can include, cutting out huge food groups, telling you to eat certain particular items for a short period of time to be able to see results. And I would say, the best way to navigate, those messages is it quick results? Because quick results are not feasible in the long run. They're not healthy. I'm going to just blanket statement that they're not healthy, because, you really can't change your body within 5 days or 2 weeks. It does take that constant constant approach to do something like that, because health is not something that you reach, or you reach that destination where you've done all that you need to do. It's something that you need to continue doing. So I guess those fast, quick kind of diets, they're often there to kind of play with your insecurities, to kind of show like it's often hyped up going, you can get these results fast, but it's not practical. And I think, to navigate that world, you have to kind of go, is this something that's telling me it can be done in a short period of time? If it is, put it to the side, keep going. If it's telling you to restrict certain food groups, again, push it aside and keep going, because it's not possible. It's very restrictive, and potentially you can be doing more damage than good. And like, for example, I know the broccoli diet was something that came up in Australia a couple of years ago, actually, and it was, you eat broccolis for five days, and apparently you can shed like a couple of kilos. And it was ridiculous, to the point that, firstly, broccolis are healthy, but broccolis in that quantity is not healthy because that's all you're getting. You're just getting vitamins from broccolis. You forget your protein, you forget all your other nutrients that you need. And so those kind of things, yes, they sound good. They sound like they can, you can lose a couple of kilos very quickly, but it's not practical. And again, it's playing on that insecurities, because what happens is you kind of feel like if you can't sustain that, or if you can't maintain that weight loss, that you've done something wrong, that there's something wrong with you. And we start doubting ourselves, and then it gets us to the next thing, and it makes us more vulnerable to keep going and looking for that next diet. But honestly, there is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with that diet that you tried. And that again is that diet industry, that weight loss industry, that multi-billion-dollar industry. It's not actually a million, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is selling you one thing after another, and telling you that you can't be good at it. Like, you're the failure in that. But to be honest, you're not the failure in that. It's failing you. But its marketing strategy is just way up there. So you feel like a failure. But yes, and again, I would say fast diet, not a thing, not healthy, not practical.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Would any of the other panelists like to add on to this?
I think I have to completely agree with Saabira, because even in the fitness industry, we have the same thing, right? We have people who walk through the door and they tell us immediately, I'm here to do this and I want to do this in 3 months. And as bad as it might be for business and revenue, I've been brutally honest with them. And I just tell them, you can do it. You definitely can. But maybe you want to give it 6 months to a year at the bare minimum, right? And I'm very realistic with what I tell them. And I may have lost a few people because of that, right? But in a world where everybody is chasing that quick buck, like Saabira said, playing on people's insecurities, right? And I could very well do the same thing. I could take them and be like, you know what? 3 months, no problem. I'll give you that results. But you got to do this. And I know they can't do all of that. I know it for a fact they can't do that. And the moment they come to me and say, you know what, it's been 2.5 months, I'm nowhere near. Yeah, that's because, these 7 things that you didn't do, it's not me, man. It's not me. I'm really good. I'm an excellent coach, but it's you, right? But I knew at the onset that you can't do all of that, right? And like Saabira said, that's how the marketing works. It's like guaranteed results, right? And then you have the sheet of the things you got to do. So in the diet industry, as well as in the fitness industry, you see this, right? You see this, get your 6 packs in 6 months, right? But they never say you get to keep it too, right? Because you cannot sustain that lifestyle. Right? So I just have to say that I completely agree with Saabira, and just like in the dieting industry, you see that in the fitness industry as well.
I'm going to step in and add a stats here.
Yeah.
This is an American stat, because obviously there's not much research done outside of America in this, but there's only 0.01% who can actually lose a large proportion of weight and keep it off. And they actually spend their life keeping that weight off. That's all they do. They just focus on their workout routine, their diet. That's their life. And so 0.01%. So it's a very small percentage. But they also put their life to it. And, you know, as you know, as myself being a career-centered woman, I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you put your whole life into something that, you know, essentially is not going to have any value at the end of the day? And so I guess that's the stats. You know, if you want to
I think Saabira's connection is a bit laggy, yeah?
Meanwhile, I'll add on until she
Yes,
comes.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
So as I said, I'm a model. Did I say that? I think somewhere along the way before we started.
your full
As a model.
Yes, we
Oh,
did.
she's back. Sorry, Saabira, do you wanna? We lost you for a second.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know what happened, and I don't know where I got cut off. But yeah, what I was saying was, you know, that 0.01%, it's not worth it to spend your whole life working towards, and being career-centered. I think there's much more to life than just, you know, maintaining a weight or a body image or shape.
That's very true, because you're more than what you look like. You know, there's so much more. That's so true. Kalpanee, you were saying, please go on.
Yeah, thanks. So as I said, I am a model. I know a lot of other people who are in media, and you know, anytime there's an interview, not with you, but you know, the standard issue is what diet do you use? What's your fitness routine? What do you do for your hair? Or, you know, I don't get asked about my skin often, but, you know, if you were fair, you would see that as well. You know, Aki, like, how do you keep your skin looking that color? How do you protect it from the sun? Or how did you change color to begin with? Or whatever it is. We're constantly asked that because it's supposed to be some sort of magical thing that we're doing that only we know. And it's this big secret that all of us just happen to be guarding like really, really closely. And like Shuaib and Saabira was saying, the thing is, it's mostly genetics. You call it genetic lottery, right? There is nothing you can do. I am this size because I have an autoimmune condition. It's physically impossible for me, I think, as far as I know, to work towards a certain weight. I can only keep it at a balance. I can eat right. I can do what's good for my body and what the doctors are telling me to do, but I can't change it. Somebody like me, so I look like this, and I always joke, I'm just like, yeah, it's because I have an illness, that's why I look like this. And people don't take me seriously. But moving away from the dark and the grim, it's natural, right? How is your hair like that? I was born like this. Why is your bone structure like that? Unless you have, you know, physical changes where you have surgery or some sort of invasive procedure, it's not possible to get this quick hack sort of solution. So I think transparency and having those kind of conversations, because we have access to information, it's I mean, most of us do, at least, and the people in this conversation do. We can't claim that, you know, let's say like in the 1940s or 50s, information was controlled, media was controlled, where you could get that information from was controlled. So you had limited access to information. We can no longer, I think, claim ignorance if you are of a certain age, if you have a certain type of background and you have that technology. This is not to say that, you know, what the media does, like what you were saying, you know, media is manipulated, like what Saabira was saying. These are multi-billion-dollar industries. I speak on colorism. Fairness industry is like, even in Sri Lanka, it's like a 2 billion rupee industry. And the most amount of spending comes from the Colombo region, not from rural areas, because uh, let's say Fair and Lovely, Glow and Lovely now might be 200 rupees, whilst the spa treatment that you're getting with an IV injection is 15,000 rupees. So the monetary value, the highest number is spent in Colombo. So you can't segregate people and be like, oh, they don't know any better, or they're being manipulated. There is something going on and it is overwhelming. But I think, like what Shuaib was saying, it's also our responsibility to be as transparent as we can. It's a civic duty. And I think ethics is where we need to head towards media ethics. And whether you're an influencer, whether you're a digital creator, there needs to be a guideline as to if you put up a photo and if it's edited, say this image has been edited or altered, it's been airbrushed, or there's a filter on this. These need to be absolute standards, because there's only so far you can get from reading or trying to find out more about it or understanding, because it is so overwhelming when there's so much money to be made. It is capitalism at the end of the day. So unless we're talking about the fall of capitalism, we need those two things to go hand in hand. So one, it lies with us and it lies with the audience. Two, it lies with pressure groups. Three, governments. Four, people who are the creators. It's their duty. And then they have to self-regulate, or there needs to be laws. I've also had a lot of coffee, so I'm if I'm not making sense, tell me.
No, you are making so much sense. Yes, Saabira, yes, of course.
No, I think, what Kalpanee was saying was completely correct. And I think me coming from Australia and coming to Sri Lanka, because I often visit Sri Lanka, for me, it's a culture shock, okay? Because it's so embedded in some of the things like, the fairness things and, sometimes even judgment in terms of weight, shape and size. The culture in Sri Lanka is very much different. I'm not putting down Sri Lanka in any way, shape or so. It's close to my heart. But it's so prominent. And I think, as a younger generation, as you kind of move forward, be mindful of this because it's very present. You go to an auntie's house. I'm not sure how everyone's is. Everyone might be different. People might not agree with me. But, the first thing they go is, oh, look, you've gained weight. Oh, look, you've become thinner. And it's like, it's those kind of comments that keep getting passed on. And you know what? It's passed on to our generation so much so that we think it's normal, and it's not. That comment of, oh, she's fair or she's dark, those need to stop. And it can stop from us as the new generation coming forward. And it doesn't take that much knowledge or it doesn't take much to start changing the way we speak. Even as we kind of meet up with friends, instead of the first thing you comment about is being, oh, look, you've gained weight, or oh, look, you lost weight over the lockdown or whatever's happening around you, it's kind of going, oh, look, you've achieved so much or something. Change the conversation, move it away from that body appearance kind of things. And it can start with you. It doesn't have to take much to change that conversation.
If I could,
there is so much truth to that. Yeah, of course. Go
on. Because Saabira was talking about Sri Lanka and the particular type of culture that we have, it's not, I think, the same as taking ideals or problems and issues that we see in the Western countries. For example, here, skinny shaming happens a lot. You don't have curves on your body. Who's going to marry you? I'm sure a lot of people have heard that term pukalal, right? I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that, but you have a flat body, you don't have assets, and it's a lot of shaming that happens, and especially towards women. It is part of that toxic culture as well. So these things intersect. Just like men may feel a certain pressure to look a certain way, it is from that same ideal that they believe that women should look like this. You should have this size bust. You should have a behind like this, etc. And even in my case, I wouldn't say that, I had, I was diagnosed with it because I had no idea something like that existed. For me, growing up, I always thought that, okay, you're tall. I was taller than the average kid in my class, and you're skinny. You don't have any shape because obviously we wear uniforms, which is like a frock, and, you basically float in it. And nobody really knows what you look like. So all you hear is what other people tell you. And, when the boys make fun of you, or if, you're not the pretty one, you're told, when are your breasts going to grow? Have you not hit puberty? This starts impacting you. And it took me a long time until I went to England. Again, I'm going to be very candid. People started saying that I have a behind for somebody with a small waist. And I just couldn't compute that, because in my head and in my mind, I was straight and narrow. For me, even now, I look like a rectangle to me. I do not have any shape. And when I first started modeling, and it's a longer story, I will elaborate further if we have time, but it is due to this issue because of how I was seeing myself when I started getting compliments. When I got that opportunity to first start modeling in England, I started realizing that, oh, compliments and people telling me that you look like this, seeing myself visually presented helped me. But at the same time, it's a complicated industry. You do get airbrushed at the end of the day. There's lighting. You don't look like that in real life. You're not going to look like the way you're going to look with perfect lighting when you're out there in the sun. But it did help me because I consciously started taking raw files. Whenever we would shoot, I would ask the photographer to see the raw footage before it's edited. We would get raw files for our portfolios without any editing. And then I would build an image for myself. But to be very honest, I mean, I've been modeling now for 10 years at a stretch. But before that, I think in total 15 years or so, almost half my life now. And I still can't imagine myself in my mind's eye. I don't know what I really look like. So every time there's a picture out there, I need to see the raw file to see how much has been edited, what has been changed, what do I look like. And also with an autoimmune condition, your skin color changes often. My skin color changes morning to night because depending on the amount of inflammation that I have underneath my skin, I can be darker or lighter. My texture can change, the porosity can change, hair thickness, shine, luster, all of these things constantly change, right? And it is very difficult for me, but it also has given me the space to start exploring and taking control of that narrative without being told what I look like. And now I'm exploring, and I'm now like 33 years old, and I'm still trying to figure things out. But long story short, it's not an easy thing to do, but there's space that we can take control of and we can navigate through, I think.
No, I think that's really important. I guess at the end of the day, it's about how you see yourself. You shouldn't be focusing on another person's idea of what you look like or another person's view of what you should look like. And that, I believe, is the first step towards self-love, which is something that is heavily lacking in today's culture and industry. Now that we have addressed the idea of the big impact that media has, along with that culture, of course, I'd like to bring the conversation down to some coping mechanisms that we can use in this day and age. Because, of course, Kalpanee spoke about media literacy and ethics, right? And of course, Shuaib and Saabira both added on to what the nutrition should be like, what the diet industry, the false misconceptions within the diet industry, right? But when it comes to coping mechanisms, do either of you have any personal advice that you can give out to the people who are listening in right now? Shuaib, would you like to start off?
Shuaib can start if she wants.
That's completely fine, Saabira. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on, of course.
I was going to say, Nethmi, you mentioned body love, self-love. And I think sometimes that can be a very hard concept for people to grasp altogether, especially when they've gone so long with not loving themselves, not liking themselves. And so I like to kind of use it as body respect before we kind of go into that love. Because I think it's the first step to changing, our perception of ourselves is to actually start respecting ourselves. And that can be a huge jump and a leap for many. So I think if you look at it on a spectrum, we often find body respect comes way before self-love. And if we can't get to self-love, it's okay as long as we can at least get to body respect or self-respect. In that regards, I think that's a huge step. But I'm going to, Shuaib, you can answer the rest of that question for.
No, I think that's important that you pointed that out. Yeah, of course. Shuaib, go
Definitely,
on.
definitely. That's so true. So, just for all of the listeners, something that I have driven very hardly from the very beginning is to understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? And I think one of the best people who's put this whole concept out there is none other than the author Simon Sinek, who has his book Start with Why. If you have read it, you know what I'm talking about. So, often with weight, with diet, with career, with all of that, the biggest issue that I see is a lack of clarity, right? People not quite understanding why they're doing what they are doing. And it is a very tough place to come to because the amount of noise around us is massive, right? And it is very compelling. It's backed by the most powerful, the most influential, the most financially affluent organizations, people, industries out there, right? I think one of the greatest examples is how for the longest time, right, Milo has been portrayed as a drink that is energetic, good for children, something you must drink. And I remember, thinking to myself as a child, when I want to have something healthy, instead of having a fizzy drink, I will have a Milo, not knowing the amount of sugar that is in that box, right? And not knowing the damage that sugar can do to your body, like literally a zero value nutrient, right? Which does nothing but harm to your body, right? Other than, of course, maybe your psychological dopamine hit when you consume the sugar. Now, there is a lot of noise out there, right? But the way that I try my level best to encourage people to look at this and to give some form of Northern Star way to navigate yourself is try to understand what are you trying to do here. For me, it is about, and what I always say is developing the health, be it mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, that I need to move towards the person that I want to be, the place that I want to be. And if that doesn't require a six-pack, if that doesn't require a slim waistline, if that doesn't require arms like Dwayne Johnson, then I don't really need it, right? For me, it's about, my definition of fitness is having the ability to do what is meaningful, purposeful to you in your life. This body that we have at the end of the day is a vessel that helps us transport ourselves around, right? The impact that we can live on this world, which is potentially one of the most contending things that you can do for yourself, right? In terms of fulfillment. This body is only a tool that we can use to get about. And it's sad to see that sometimes we get so obsessed that, our entire journey, our entire mission, our entire purpose of being on this planet is hindered, stopped, slowed down, or completely destroyed because we're just so focused on fixing this physical appearance that we have. Right? And at the end of the day, it's going to decay once we're dead and gone, which is inevitable. We become worm food, whether we had a six-pack or not, whether we were fair-skinned or not, right? Whether we were tall or not, we're going to turn into worm food at the end of the day, right? So why is it that we are so obsessed about our appearance? Now, this is not to say that if you want to lose a little bit of weight, you shouldn't do it. This is not to say that if you are not happy with the way your skin is, if you have a clinical issue, that you shouldn't get treatment. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that your focus shouldn't be so huge on this, that it hinders you from serving the very purpose that you are here to serve. And that is individual to each and every one of us. Right? So that's why I always encourage even my clients when they come to the gym to celebrate those little wins. A 64-year-old lady who comes and trains, who was unable to pick herself up from the bench when she lies down for a bench press, can today get up on her own. She was not able to carry her clothes basket at home, but at 64, now she can carry her clothes basket. Celebrate those wins. I am very sure she has not lost weight since she joined us. And if I'm not mistaken, she has gained weight. Right? And I've told her this, but it doesn't matter, right? That's not what she's here. She's doing better. She's more functional. She's doing more than she used to do. She's happier, right? And she herself says that. So we need to kind of develop that mindset, that understanding, right? And look at things in a broader perspective instead of going so deep and so narrow and fixating on, achieving these Instagram-like bodies or appearances that we have, right? If there's something you dislike, work on it. But like Saabira said, don't start by attacking yourself or criticizing yourself or thinking that, you're in some really dark place, right? Start with appreciating what you've got, or if not, like Saabira said, by at least respecting what you have. What you have is already what somebody else doesn't have, right? Start from there, respect that. And from there, do sustainable things that you can do on a daily basis, right? Sustainable things that you can do. Stay generally more active than you used to be, right? Work on getting more active. Eat a little bit better than you used to, right? Minimally processed, wholesome food, not too bad, right? Don't make it so difficult that the stress of developing your health will kill you before your health does, right? So I'll end on that note.
Wow. I
Not
think
straight.
one thing that, yeah, of course, Sabir, but just want to say this one line that really got to me is what you have is something somebody else doesn't have. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because you always focus on what they have and what we don't have, but we don't really flip it around and think, oh my God, we have this and that's something they don't have, only we have. So thank you so much for that. Yes, Sabira, do go on.
No, so I was just going to add on to what Shuaib was saying, and he really mentioned that small things, sustainable. I think with a lot of that dieting world, we often go, oh look, I have to do this to achieve this goal, but you don't. It's what you do, what the small things that you do consistently is where you see the most results. See, for me, I get the opposite. So Shuaib gets fitness goals. I get people with going, I need to achieve this number. And this number is often a weight. And they come to me and go, I need to get to this weight. And I go, okay. So the first thing I ask is, what are you going to achieve by getting to this weight? Because it's often not what that weight that they want to get to. It's what that comes with it, everything that comes with it. And then we kind of go, okay, so you want to eat healthy. So you want to be fit. You want to be able to move. You want to be able to carry your washing basket. Okay, let's see. What do we need to get to that? Because regardless of the weight that you would carry, you can still achieve those things. Right? It's about working on those things. But we often, with the noise of, society and diet culture, we often think we can only achieve those things if we get to this number. That is completely not true, because you know what? People at that number still can't do those things because all they did was focus on that number. They didn't build strength. They didn't eat healthy. And, sometimes they could have just starved themselves, didn't eat any meals and just exercise extensively. Sorry, Shuaib, I'm just pointing out what you said. But you know what? It's not healthy. And you know what? They weren't able to carry their washing basket in the end because all they had was no energy. They were weak. They were tired. So it's going, what are you looking to achieve? What is this ideal body shape, weight going to give you? And then put that weight aside, put that body shape aside, and focus on those things that come with it, because those are where you see the true benefits. It's not the number on the scale or the body that you're coming with. And in the end, you'll feel a lot more satisfaction by doing that.
Yeah, very, very true. I think an overarching theme is that, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you focus all of your efforts on, but it's just the little changes that you make in your lifestyle to make things a little better as you go along and focus on other things. I do also want to mention, since we are in the topic of making little changes in our lifestyle, that we, as in me and my volunteers at Let's Talk, we're working on a program called the Workout Accountability Program. I think we've already discussed this with Shuaib, if I'm not mistaken. And so basically, the whole idea of this program is where you will be a part of a group of people who are there to keep each other accountable. And it's not a diet plan or a workout routine. It's just, make sure you are healthier and you are moving yourself a little bit more every day, and just to have someone keep you on track of being and feeling better and feeling healthier. So if you guys need any more information on that, you can always contact me afterwards. But bringing the conversation back, Kalpanee, in terms of coping mechanisms, much like what Shuaib and Saabira were talking about, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I really love what Shuaib and Saabira said, and especially the term body respect. I love that. And I think that is one coping mechanism, in the sense that respect for our bodies and respect for everybody else's bodies and lives and whatever they're doing. This may sound like a very rudimentary statement, but I wish we could all vibe just the way we are, and that vibing is fine. You do you, and we're good, right? But that's not the case, unfortunately. And self-care and self-love is very important. It's even a radical act because we know of intersection, right? So patriarchy, toxic masculinity, feminism, capitalism, they're all connected together to tell us that, you shouldn't love yourself. You shouldn't be spending time on yourself. Make more money. You have responsibilities. Do it for your kids. You have to provide for your wife. There isn't a lot of time for us to love us, to get to know us, our bodies, our minds, our needs, right? That being said, capitalism being capitalism, self-care is being packaged and sold to us over and over again these days. It's like, have you done your mask? Have you taken time out? Have you done your bubble time? Whatever it is. And it's becoming overwhelming for a lot of people because you can't get up every day and be like, I'm going to love myself today. It's a work in progress. And like what Saabira was saying, Shuaib was saying, you have to make sustainable choices in order to get there. But now messaging is that she is doing it, she looks great, he is doing it, he looks great, you should be doing it too. Why aren't you loving yourself? Why aren't you taking care of yourself? You are now failing again. So we are coming back to the same sort of problem. So because of this, I think whenever we've chatted before, Nethmi, whenever this question on self-care and self-love comes, I'm just like, no, I'm going to put the weight onto our surroundings and our community, because it is a struggle to put all of that weight onto us when there's so many actors, like what Shuaib beautifully said, who are more powerful, who are more financially capable, who are able to get all of this information out there to manipulate this information, right? And when it comes to people around you, as I said, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be in this career, I wouldn't be advocating for more space, for more people, for more diversity, for more inclusivity, if it wasn't for the people who supported me, if it wasn't for the first agent in England who said, hey, I think you should model. If it wasn't for Timo and I came to Sri Lanka who said, I think you can model. If it wasn't for my agent who said, Cubs, why is your hair always being straightened? You have beautiful curly hair. Why isn't this a thing? Let's start taking care of it. Let's start putting it out there on magazines. If it isn't for my family, if it wasn't for the small community that I have online that we navigate these spaces and take control of, who support me, I wouldn't be here. Because especially modeling, I must say, people come to me often as if getting into modeling will help you with your confidence. And I have to say that it is a terribly cruel industry, in the sense that you are going to get brutally honest feedback. You are going to be judged on your body, on your appearance. Hundreds of thousands of people sometimes are looking at you, judging you, and not all of them are going to love you. So unless you have that balance, unless you're mentally capable of taking on something like that, I must warn, don't go there, don't come there, because it is a profession at the end of the day. And you have to be very strong mentally to get there. But saying that, community support helps you. So go and find your tribe, find your people, change your environment, and we can also be those actors. We can help our friends, we can help our peers. If you see somebody is not feeling so great about themselves just because of how they look, be that change. Tell that person, you look great, I like your hair, I like your this, I like what you're wearing, I like your vibe. We can all do these small acts and change how somebody else feels. And I think a lot of us know, because we're talking about mental health, it could be a matter of saving somebody's life.
Yeah, rightfully said. I feel like, we always focus on what we should be doing. We don't realize that we have an equal responsibility to help society as a whole and to cultivate these, healthy thoughts so that other people will feel better as well. And that will, bounce back. The energy will reflect back and we ourselves will continue to feel better. All right. So now I think since we've focused on the bulk of the conversation that we had already planned, there is a question from an audience member that we had received earlier, which I will pose to the group right now. All right. Just 1 second. Let me just quickly get to it. Hold on. Let me open it so I am aware of exactly what it is. All right. So it says, this is from an anonymous audience member. It says, how can I recover from bulimia and binge and purge cycle? I was a 64 kilogram at 15 years of age, and now I weigh 38 at 21. I'm extremely scared of being fat again because I was bullied and the girls my age rejected to be my friend since I was not attractive. I was called names and made fun of even for the way I was walking. My ex-boyfriend left me saying I was quote unquote ugly to my face, and I was depressed. I have a successful relationship with a handsome young man, ironically better looking than my ex now, and he doesn't care about how my body looks. And my parents literally begged me to stop purging, but I can't help it now. I want to stop this and live my life. Please help. Again, I want to apologize because it was a graphic message, but I would like to hear the thoughts of each of the panelists with regards to this particularly heartfelt yet somewhat disturbing message from one of the audience members. So please, I'd like to start with Saabira because I feel like she might have an understanding into the binge purge cycles that this particular person is talking about.
Yeah, so this is right up my alley. This is my daily work, eating disorders. Sorry about that. The binge purge cycle. So what that essentially is when you, I guess it's in a way, it's an altered form of what we call the diet cycle as well. So it's when you start, you decide that, today I'm going to be healthy and I'm just going in a day worth. Today I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to do everything I need to do to lose weight, especially with eating disorders. It's all about weight loss. And then you do whatever you need to do to lose weight. So you start restricting. A lot of these diets are all restriction. You cut out everything. You might decide that you're having, 0 calorie days are a popular thing that eating disorder clients do. But you might decide, okay, so you decide to go on this diet or cleanse, and then you start your day and you're able to do it, breakfast, lunch, doing great. And then something happens, like as the day goes on, and, it might be hunger. It might be that you went to a friend's house, food's offered, right? And you eat. And that trigger of eating triggers you to eat more and more and more. And you might not do it, at your friend's house or where you are, but you often then plan for it. Go, I've already ruined this, right? I've already ruined this day that I've started. And so I'm going to eat. And I'm going to eat with the intention of going on another diet again. So it's often with that, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go on this another cycle. And you eat and you eat and you eat until you're practically sick, right? Or you feel uncomfortable in a sense. Sometimes, the perception is greater, so you might think you've eaten more, but you might eat less. But, in the end, you feel uncomfortably full, right? And then come in our unwanted friend of guilt and shame, walks in, because you've ruined it. You've ruined that diet that you've been on, right? And so our mind goes, okay, I need to get rid of this. And that's where the purging begins, right? And I've kind of simplified this very down to the T, but it's when the purging begins, and you purge, and then you often, a lot of people with bulimia feel satisfied after a purge, feel like they've achieved something after a purge, and then again the next day starts. Okay, and this is, I guess, what we call the binge eating cycle, or the purging cycle. And honestly, there is no quick fix for such a cycle, and that's the utter truth in that. It takes a lot of work on self-confidence to start off with, building up those foundations of body respect, and then working up to break that cycle. And I would, whoever sent that in, really, really advocate for you to go and seek that professional support and guidance. It's not something that anyone on the street can do. It's not something that, any random person, and you know what, and I'm being honest, doctors as well. You know, you can walk into a doctor. Some doctors don't understand that the psychology behind an eating disorder. So seek out the right professional support and go and get that support that you need. And that's coming from my background, and I know it's not helpful in that regards, but there's so many layers to something like an eating disorder. And you know, I think you think it's an eating disorder, it's all about the food and the food will fix it. That's not the case, and that's a complete and utter truth. It's that psychology that's driving that binge eating disorder. And we often, you know, in practice, we often dissociate that. It's often like a separate person that's come into your body, that's taking control of your mind and allowing for that to happen. So, you know, dissociating from that, first step again in treatment, difficult, need the right support system to do it.
Very true. Very true. If I may say something here, because I have personal experience with BD and bulimia. And something that has really helped me, like you said, is self-confidence, to be honest. And to whoever who sent that in, first of all, I just want to say I know exactly what you're going through. And it is so terrifying to know that, you know, it is you feel like you're doing it to yourself at the end of the day, and you hold yourself accountable, and you're like, okay, after you go through it, you're like, okay, I did this, you know, and then you assume that purging is a part of the solution, because that's how my mind used to work, you know, when I used to binge eat. And I thought, okay, when I purge, I'm going to, I set a calorie limit to myself. Like I go like, okay, I have to eat this amount of calories. And then if I go above that, I would purge, and I would think, okay, now I'm back to my limit, and I'm going to be at that particular weight. I'm not going to gain weight. And something that really helped me is sometimes I wake up in the morning, I look at myself in the mirror, and I used to have this really bad practice of checking my stomach. Like I go in front of the mirror and I check whether my stomach has gotten flatter or fatter. And it was very, very damaging to my mental health. But then I changed it, right? And I used to go in front of the mirror, look at myself fully and not focus on these areas, and tell myself, I look good today. And at first, I didn't believe it, to be honest. At first, when I called myself, oh, I look good today, I didn't believe it. But with time, I kid you not, this is something that happened to me. With time, I started to believe it. And with that, there was a boost in my level of confidence and with the way I saw myself. So if you can take those tiny steps, apart from seeking professional help, which is always important, right? Do that, because I feel like that can really help you. And the first step is identifying you have a problem and wanting to seek help for. So thank you for that. Is there anyone else? Yes,
To what you just said,
of
fake
course.
it till you make it. And that's what
Very true.
just keep telling yourself until you kind of start believing it.
Yeah, it works. It's crazy. At first you think it won't, but it becomes like a practice, and it just becomes instilled in your
Changes the
mind.
negative thoughts into more positive thoughts. And it really just overrides those negative thoughts that are popping into
Yeah.
your head. And I often say it's that conversation between someone else and you, and it's just who wins.
Very true. Very, very true. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to yes, Kalpanee.
Thank you. First of all, like, you know, everybody said, I think it's really important to go and seek professional help, because it is so complicated, because there are so many layers, whether it's depression, peer pressure, societal pressure, being rejected, then, you know, and a complicated relationship with food. From personal experience, as I said, when I was younger, I didn't put on weight, and I was, you know, my parents were trying to do what they thought was right by me by saying, you must eat this amount of food because you're losing too much weight. And we need you to be a certain weight to be healthy, because my condition wasn't diagnosed. So I had to sit and be like, not that they force fed me, but I had to force myself to eat. And it started becoming complicated. And then, you know, the older I got, and when I finally got my diagnosis, it was, oh, you have lupus, so now I can't eat certain foods. I have to completely change my diet, cut out food, restrict food, and be very conscious about what I put into my body. And also, there's no guide, because autoimmune conditions are like that. Different people react to different things. So you have to start keeping a diary. You eat this today, and then you have to see how you're feeling the next day, whether you get your inflammation the day after. So it was very complicated. And then there are overlapping issues, right? Because you end up with anxiety. I ended up with depression. So there are multiple layers working along with, what the world is feeding you, what the media is feeding you, what your boyfriend or girlfriend or your friends are telling you about you, right? And what really did help me was professional help, in the sense of I saw a psychiatrist who did put me on medication. Again, medication is not for everybody. It worked for me because it allowed me to balance myself out, just emotionally, chemically balance myself out. And then with the psychologist, I learned about cognitive behavioral therapy, and I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, I think, which is part of what you're saying as well, Nethmi, where you condition yourself to think a certain thing, where you have a trigger and you recondition. And it really helped me understand. So instead of being like, whenever I saw food, to being like, oh, is this going to make me sick? Or do I have to eat this to put on a certain amount of weight? It helped me disassociate it. It helped me understand those triggers. If I'm stressed, I know I'm not going to be eating, so I need to be more conscious about, even if it's small amounts of food, to put in the correct amount of nutrients that I need, the amount of calories that I need in order to function, and ensuring that I get it. I'm breaking those cycles. And over the last 10 years or so, I would say, like, I haven't had a problem, because I am in control, because those tools allowed me to pick a pattern. And now I can see the warning signs whenever it's cropping up. Like, if I am not eating, if I missed my meals, I know it's a red flag, because I keep a diary. And then I'm like, okay, get back on track. What's stressing you, what's going wrong here, let's evaluate. So it's a long process, like Saabira was saying. And as I mentioned earlier, it took me about 15 years to fully go through that journey. And I'm not at the end post or the end goal yet, and there's a long way to go. But these things really did help, and I think professionals would truly be of an aid to you.
Yes, precisely so. Thank you so much. Shuaib, do you have any personal experience or anything you'd like to add on to?
Yes, because I mean, I've not had obviously what this lady is going through, but I myself am somebody who's been down that alley of developing anxiety disorder, having depression and all of that. And I know it's not the exact same, but what I would like to share with the person who sent this question in is, the first thing is, by creation, you, me, Kalpanee, Nethmi, Saabira, every human being that has ever been on planet Earth by creation is faulty, right? It comes in different shapes, different forms, different sizes, different illnesses, different ways of thinking. Could be your family setup, could be the economy, or it could be, whatever. Nobody is given everything on a silver platter, right? And what you're dealing with is not something I can possibly even imagine what you're going through. But I can tell you this, right? Regardless of you overcoming this or not, regardless of you having this or not, with who you are, what you have, and all that you are right now, you can still leave a positive impact in this world, right? You can still do that. And you surely can. If you work with the right people, you most certainly can even overcome this as well. But I want you to begin from a place of understanding that even if you do not overcome this challenge, you are still amazing. You are still awesome. And there are so many things that you can do that so many people around the world might not be able to do. Begin from that place. And I think the rest was covered by Saabira and Kalpanee. You need to get that professional help. There are people who invest every waking hour of their lives working on this, so quite naturally they'll know more than you. But there's one more step that you need to do. And this is, you need to become the person who is most aware, most on the ball with the challenge that you're going through. This was something I learned through the experience I had of anxiety and depression. See, what you need to understand is, a professional is not 24 hours in your head. You are with your mind 24 hours. If you can learn to listen, if you can learn to spot your behaviors, the patterns that you're going through, not to judge yourself, but just understand it's when I do this that this happens. It is because I did this that this happened, right? Or work backwards. I'm here because of this, here because of this. You need to become your agent of change. You need to be the person who's most obsessed with getting yourself out of this, right? Because nobody can pretend, I mean, it's not possible for anybody else to put in as much work to come out of this as you need to be doing it. And that's something I learned. I went to psychiatrists, I went to psychologists, and I genuinely believe they did their best, right? But it was only because of the extra work I did before and after meeting them that I was able to come to where I am today, right? So that is the additional step that I'd like to share with you, because if you do not take this as your challenge that you need to overcome, and if you sit and wait and hope that the people around you will solve it for you, the chances are slim, right? But I want to end on that note that I began with, which is, even if you don't figure this out completely or partially, you're still doing an absolutely amazing job. Start from there.
That was beautifully put. I think there was so much that was discussed within that particular question. So to whoever who posted, I hope that has helped you in some way or form. Of course, if you feel like you need that help, I suggest you reach out. There are so many people out there who are willing to offer that help. So please take initiative. And on top of that, we have one last question from the audience before we wrap things up. It reads, how do you overcome the problem of your mind comparing yourself to a peer in terms of not only body image, but in terms of intelligence as well? Especially when you know that comparing yourself to others is something you shouldn't do, and yet subconsciously happens anyway. All right, I'm going to repeat that. So how do you overcome the problem of your mind comparing yourself to a peer in terms of not just your body? Because I feel like these days within this conversation, we have spoken a lot about body image, but in terms of intelligence as well, especially when you know that comparing yourself to others is something you shouldn't do, but yet subconsciously it happens anyway. Is there anyone who would like to add on to this particularly interesting query?
If that's okay with the other two.
Of course, Saabira. Yeah, go on.
I'm going to say, firstly, it's very normal to compare yourself with other people. It's just part of the way the mind does. Regardless of, if it's body image, if it's intelligence, it's very, very much natural to do that, to compare yourself. But I think that the difference is, are you going to let it affect you, or are you able to move on from that? Or are you going to let it consume you? So it's kind of going, okay, yes, this is affecting me. Again, self-awareness. Shuaib, mentioned that very much. Awareness of what's going in to you and what's coming out as well, your reaction to that. Yes, okay, so the person next to me, okay, I'm going to say Shuaib, example wise, oh, he's smarter than me. Oh, what's I could feel, uncomfortable, or something can be going on in my mind because, Shuaib, talks really well, really, really great, really intelligent, and those doubts can come into my mind. But the practice is going, okay, why are these thoughts coming into my mind? Okay. And then rechecking myself, going, yeah, Shuaib's good at what he does. Great. But I'm good at what I do, and I do different things. All right. And constantly, when those doubts come, it can be body image, it can be intelligence, it can be whatever it is, rechecking yourself. And, one of the works that I often do with my clients to start off with is actually setting up your values and understanding your worth before you can do that work. Sometimes you just have to understand your worth, and allowing yourself to go, okay, this is me and that is them, and that is okay. And it is also okay to feel uncomfortable because, someone else is talking better or is more intelligent, but using that as a going, oh, okay, I'm good at what I do, and also I can work on X, Y, Z. Right. So it's not only rechecking yourself and, being happy with yourself as well, but using that as like a motivation or a guide to better yourself in any way, shape or form. And, you know, that can also be taken to different levels, but also kind of knowing your boundaries, going, okay, I'll allow that person to be good at that and I'll be good at this as well. So it's going, you know, regardless, body shape, intelligence, whatever it is, spending some time to recheck with yourself and going, why is this affecting me, and what can I learn from this? Curiosity. And I think that's something, you know, when Shuaib was talking earlier, that really came to my mind, is be curious about what's happening within yourself when these things are happening. All right. If you're comparing yourself to someone else, if that's happening with you, be curious as to why is that happening for me? And, you know, Shuaib was mentioning earlier, for the earlier question, going, you know, a lot of the work that he did was that work from yourself. And you know what? I think every therapist you go to will give you that spiel of going, therapy doesn't end within that room. Therapy is an ongoing thing where you do that self-work. You do that, you know, and, you know, sometimes you don't understand what you have to do. And that's why the therapist is there, to guide you along to do that work. But it's a lot of that rechecking and understanding yourself and then building on yourself. So, you know, and hopefully that answers this question as well. Like, regardless of what it is that you're comparing yourself to, it's always looking at, you know, why is this triggering me? And what can I get from this? Be curious.
Be curious. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to having a sort of an analytical mind and taking a step out of the box of this reminds me of something that I read recently. So I was reading this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's a beautiful book. And there is a phrase that he uses called watch the thinker, where he says, if you have thoughts going on in your mind, take a step out and watch yourself as those thoughts come in and come out, and really try to analyze why you are thinking what you're thinking. And I feel like, you know, these areas of diet culture, nutrition, media literacy, like Kalpanee said, all starts with you being able to kind of navigate your own thought process. Like Shuaib mentioned as well earlier, how he was able to navigate his own thought process. And yeah, I think there's so much truth to that. Shuaib and Kalpanee, anything else that you would like to mention with regards to the note on comparison that we're discussing right now?
Yeah, Shoaib, is it okay if I go first? Thank you. Um, I'm not gonna repeat what Shoaib and Saabira have so beautifully put. Hygiene, in the sense of taking care of yourself, it's very important. Having those steps, your mindfulness, self-acceptance, all of that is superbly important. Another thing that has helped me on top of all of that is, we're all putting it back to the outside again, is understanding how these systems work. Because whether it's your intelligence, even, it is privilege, it is opportunity, it is a genetic lottery. It tends to compound on top of each other. If you, I don't know how intelligence is being measured within the scope of the question, but if it's the fact that they have a higher education, they are more qualified than you, then maybe there's a lot of money involved in this situation. Maybe it's money that you didn't have. Maybe it's money that, maybe it's an opportunity that you didn't get to have. Maybe it's not a biological thing. Maybe it is a biological thing. Maybe you don't look like they do physically because they won that genetic lottery, so to say, which is also, again, just compounding over generations and generations and generations through selectivity. And how selectivity works, again, is then connected to what the world is telling us, what the society is telling us. So being able to deconstruct and understand that, these things are not necessarily constructs of our mind alone. They are being fed to us. They are being even biologically being driven for us to be attracted. For example, like, let's take clear skin. You are biologically attracted to that because you think that subconsciously that it is healthier. But we obviously now have deconstructed that notion, and we understand that, that's not the case for everybody. We are not, living in caveman era where there one person with clear skin is probably our best bet of propagating and having children. So we've, learned to grow past it. So just like that, understanding, reading, access to information, as I said, is a privilege. But at the same time, I would say, for the purposes of this conversation, if you're on Zoom, you can Google, you can find this information out. You have the tools to deconstruct these things further, in addition to doing that inner work.
Yeah, I believe there's so much information out there that if you are able to cultivate a critical mind and be curious, like Saabira said earlier, that there's so much you can tap into and learn and grow. Shuaib, any final notes?
Well, I think that in addition to what both ladies mentioned, is potentially what's going to happen now. And that is that whoever who asked that question or had that thought right now, okay, I'm somebody who compares a lot, already got a lot of actionable information that will really benefit them and help them. But here's my question to them. What are you going to do about it? Are you actually going to go and Google it? Are you actually going to go and read up on it? Right? And when you do, right, let's say you read up on it and you find techniques and strategies, right? And which I think is important because we're living in a world where the marketers are not going to stop pushing that information out there. They're just increasing their spending power on it. So then it becomes your responsibility to do at best, like Kalpanee said, with the resources that you have, to do your best. And then you go out there and you read maybe an article that tells you to develop a daily practice, maybe a 5 minutes where you come out of the world and the noise and all of that. And you actually think, you know what, that's them. This is me, right? I can do better with who I am and what I can do rather than trying to match up to them. And like Kalpanee said, they may have won the genetic lottery. Maybe they're taller, maybe they're faster, maybe they're fair skinned. And rather than you trying to be them, if you can develop and cultivate and become the best version of yourself, that gives you a competitive advantage. Or another example, maybe you read a strategy where you get 5 minutes, right? The moment you see somebody or something and you feel it's better than you get 5 minutes to compare. You set your time of 5 minutes and you get to do all the comparison you want. Oh, he or she is fairer, fitter, stronger, whatever. But when that timer goes, when that 5 minute goes, you're done. You're not allowed to compare anymore. All right? Because what often happens is you just keep doing it throughout, right? But maybe if you could, I'm just saying this is hypothetically a strategy. But the point I want to come to is at the end of the day is you're going to find hundreds of strategies out there to beat the problem that you're facing. But the real question again boils down to daily habits. Will you put in the effort? Will you put in the work? And do you have the discipline, or will you develop the discipline to do what you need to do in order to get to where you want to be? Because that's the real question. Because at the end of this discussion, there's going to be so much of perspective, knowledge, information, tips, tricks, whatever that has been shared. But if you wake up tomorrow and go through the same motions that you were going through, that's the question you need to be asking yourself.
I think that was beautifully said. I do believe that we've come to the end of our discussion. There's so many things that were unpacked within the span of, I believe, around 1.5 hours now, where we spoke about body dysmorphic disorders, men's mental health, when it comes to the industries like modeling, nutrition, fitness, diet culture, and so many different areas. And there were these little trinkets of wisdom that were shared throughout this conversation that I feel would have impacted anyone who is currently going through issues with loving themselves or respecting themselves. I would like to use that term from now on. And there's just so much to learn. So I just want to say thank you so much to Shuaib and Kalpanee and Saabira. I'm hoping that it's not too late for you to go to sleep, Saabira, because it must be at least 12 o'clock in the night over there. But thank you so much. And thank you so much for the Rotaract team for having me, as well as the rest of the panelists. Any closing remarks, if there's any, of course, while we have a little bit of time left, of course. Go on.
I'm going to say one thing. Thank you, everyone, for having me on today. I actually do have an online workbook if you want to start your journey on making sure that, you are looking into the bigger picture of things. And, in that workbook, I go through mindset, I go through values, mindfulness, and just to start off, just a stepping stone. So I have that on my website, and if you just Google my full name, you'll hopefully find that as well available. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for having us today.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to pass over controls to, oh wait, hold on. Before that, Kalpanee and Shuaib, any closing remarks?
Can I?
Yes,
course, go on.
please.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having all of us. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Saabira. Thank you, Shuaib. Thank you, Nethmi. You all are awesome because on a general basis, I think I unpack colorism. This is the first time I've gotten to unpack this publicly, and I learned so much. So thank you. For anybody who's listening in, I'm not a professional, a medical professional, but we do hold these series where we try to understand colorism and also certain body ideas are getting unpacked as well. Not in full, but if you would like to join in, please, drop me a message on Instagram, and I'm happy to have a chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Saabira, Kalpanee, Nethmi, thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers for the opportunity. I honestly, truly, deeply believe that the opportunity to serve is a blessing. Not everybody gets to do it. Not everybody gets the platform. Not everybody has the resources, the privilege, and all of that. So I consider myself to be extremely blessed, and I'm so thankful to all of you for the knowledge you've given me, for the opportunity you've given me to share that knowledge as well. And to all of the listeners, all of us have our imperfections, right? And we're all just a work in progress. So please stop stressing about it overly, all right? And like both the ladies mentioned, do get in touch with us. If any of you listening have ever sent me a voice note or a question, I go really in depth to answering you guys on Instagram and now TikTok as well, if that's your preferred medium. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I consider it to be my passion and my purpose to serve you guys, and it's not coming at a cost. So please just send that message if you have any questions. I would consider it an absolute honor to be of service. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I would like to remind everyone on the Workout Accountability Program, if you guys have any questions or queries on that, reach out to me on Instagram. And I think it is time for me to pass on controls to Sandhuni and Ara. Thanks again, and this has been so incredible. Sandhuni?
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Nethmi, for a job well done. Thank you, Saabira, Kalpanee, and Shuaib for making this discussion a very important and very informative one. Everyone definitely has something to take back home today. So thank you all. Have a good day.
Yes. Yes, like Kara said, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for this really interesting and insightful discussion. I think it helped all of us. So thanks again.
All right. See you. Have a great day, everybody.